Today's class, I'm calling it the price of freedom. I was inspired to talk about this, to do this, just realizing the COP26 just happened. And so I thought, you know what, I wanted to talk about that, but then I thought, let me do it in the context of this other conversation that I think comes actually at the heels of the last class as well. Gentlemen, can you just introduce yourselves really fast? So with the two volunteers.
Hello everyone, my name is Santiago Lopez. I'm currently a senior here. I'm majoring in biomedical engineering. I'm originally from Bogota, Colombia. So yeah, that's pretty much it about me.
Uh-huh.
I'm Paul John Boulderston, PJ's fine. I'm a junior studying math and physics, and I'm from Doylestown, Pennsylvania.
Doylestown, Pennsylvania. Dude, and it's Carlos, right? Santiago. Yeah. Okay. All right, man. So, gentlemen, you're going to just sit tight. This is going to be one of those classes where I'm going to talk, and then I want you to ask some questions. We're going to have a little bit of a back and forth, okay? It's very different than last class. And I don't know, I have this idea that it'd just be really good to frame this. And what I want to say to you all is that this is not a political class. It's not a political conversation. It's going to be a sociological conversation. So I want to really talk about the sociology of what is freedom and control and constraint, okay? So can you go to and what I want to do is, hey, by the way, I think this is a really cool class. I think it's going to be a really valuable class. There's sometimes when I just want to stand up here and talk. I used to do that. Like I actually used to talk to people. And the reason I largely stopped talking very much is because over the years I'd give what I thought was like really like killer class and see what I thought were some really cool things. That doesn't mean anybody else thought that, but whatever, I thought so. I was entertaining for me, so that was good. And then I would see people, after class and they wouldn't remember anything that I said. And I'm like, what am I doing here? Like, I'm just talking to myself, and this is before even the world of cell phones, right? It's not like people got lost, and nobody remembered anything. Because, you can't remember anything, right? And so what we typically do in a class like this is we have our notes out, and we write all these notes, and maybe we go back and we read over those notes for a quiz or an exam or something, but oftentimes we never do. And then so it means nothing anyway. So I decided that, we might as well listen to each other talk, but sometimes I actually want to talk. And today will be a day maybe when I just try to frame some things in a way. So freedom is an issue that I personally have been studying, reading the great philosophers and historians and so on for 35 years, right, since my mid-20s. And you have to balance this out, right? On one hand, you have individual freedom, individual liberty, meaning that people have the ability to act in the ways that they want to act, do the things they want to do. Like, do we want to wear a mask? Do we not want to wear a mask? Do we have to show our COVID-free, ID code or whatever to some authority somewhere when we walk into buildings and that sort of thing? Or do we not have to? Can we own a gun, not own a gun? Can we take a vaccine on our own? Any number of things, right? Can I just get in my car and travel 5 states over, right? So individual liberties, right? But on the other side of individual liberties is the need to control individual liberties. Because you cannot just allow human beings, if you're going to live in a complex society, a big society, a complex society, think about like traffic in Bogota, right? If you're going to live in a complex society, you have to have rules and control. Otherwise, it's just chaos, and you don't want chaos, right? Like, you don't want people just driving down the road deciding if they're going to be on the left or the right. Like, you don't want that. Nor do you want to not have speed limits, because there's nothing worse than driving along in your car and having someone fly by you at 3 times the speed. It's dangerous. It's dangerous. And do you want other controls? You want government controls, right? Because any company might decide that, you know what, we're going to make this baby food, but, we're going to put these poisonous, these ingredients in that may or may not be poisonous. I'm not really sure, but we're not really controlling for that. And then they end up poisoning a bunch of babies. And it's just like, oh, well, we did that. But we have this thing called a government that says, you know what? And you might say, well, then that company would be out of business. It's like, no, the babies are already poisoned. So, like, what do you mean? It doesn't matter. So then we have the controls on individual liberties. So these people making baby food have to follow certain criteria by which they do that, or water, or whatever the case is, right? So we're always like in this balance. So you need a certain amount of control by the government, but you want as little as possible, because you also want individuals to have as much freedom as they can have, right? So we're balancing this all the time. But freedom has a cost. Letting people do what they want to do has a price. And government power has a price. So letting your government, just letting a group of people be in control of the power of a government, which is the power to get those individuals to do whatever you say they should do, and then having this government power, these entities be so powerful that they can just do whatever the hell they want to do, that has a price. It's good because it means you can have a really well-ordered society, and it's bad because that well-ordered society means that people are going to take advantage, and it's like, and the individuals over there won't be allowed to do what they want to do, right? So you see this, right? So the freedom is good, and it's bad, because I want to do what I want to do, right? And so but if everyone does that, it can be a problem. So you see, we're balancing all the time. This is the moderation. By the way, this is that thing in the middle, whereby you want a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and you want to try to stay in the middle. And the middle is kind of where the wisdom is. But I'm going to give you some examples. Okay, so gentlemen, are we good here? You got the premise of the day? All right, man. Go to the first thing. So last time we looked at COVID, last class, but we did China. But I'm going to do Korea. And Korea is a really nice example for us, because the Korean government is a democratically elected government. Democracy, meaning that, whatever democracy is. I mean, democracy is this thing whereby as much power as possible is in the hands of individuals. And the democracy means there are a lot of democratic processes operating in Korea pretty well, very well, actually. The elections are free, the elections are fair, that people have a fair amount in Korea of abilities to do what it is that they want to do on a day-to-day basis. They can travel, they're in control of their bodies. They're very similar to the United States, right? There are other things they can't have, right? There's like gun control. I mean, well, hang on, we'll get to that. But anyway, so Korea's 55 million, we're 330 million. So all the data on Korea, I have to multiply by 6 to be equal to the United States, okay? And so let's go to the next one. So cases of COVID in Korea. There are 390,000 cases, 390,700 as of a couple days ago. Now, mind you, listen, you could trust the Korean government. The Chinese government, as I said the other day, it's like, I'm not going to stand behind the numbers that the Chinese government puts out. They're a hell of a lot more accurate than lots of people want to think that they are. But the Korean government is putting out some really rock solid numbers, okay? So I know people in public health, working in public health in Korea. I know people in the government in Korea. I mean, they're very accurate numbers, okay? 390,000. So we got to multiply that by 6, and we have 2.3 million. The deaths are a little over 3,000 deaths. Okay? And they calculate deaths in Korea, COVID deaths, exactly how we do. Okay, so here we go. We've got to multiply by 6. All right, next slide. So if Korea had the same population as the United States, these are what the numbers would be. Okay? And look at those on the far right. So, I mean, first off, look at the second column, the cases. Huge, huge difference. And then look at the deaths. Okay? Now, I'm not saying this is good or bad. For me, I'm not even going to throw an opinion out here. It doesn't matter. So I want to ask you all, the two of you. So when you think about what I said about this balance, so you want as much individual liberty as possible within reason, right? Because you need people to follow certain rules. Because remember. In this country, we drive on the right side of the road. You can't just randomly decide you're going to drive on the left side, right? So stuff like that. So you want as much, but because you can't have 100% freedom, because that's never going to be a good thing. It's good in a small group, but not in a big complex society. So that means you got to have some government control over here. So it's like, how much do you have and so on, right? So can you say something about these numbers in light of freedom, individual liberty, and government power? What questions come to mind for you? Either of you.
I guess the first question to ask is probably like what nationwide efforts were done in Korea that made it such that they had much lower numbers even after we scale them up to our population size in the U.S.
So when you say what nationwide efforts, why do you postulate that there are even nationwide efforts?
It's kind of just based off of how you framed the question.
Well, wait, hang on one second. Hang on. Go ahead, say that again.
It's more so just based off how you frame the discussion.
Okay. So what do you postulate then? Like, what are you thinking? Because these are hugely different numbers here, right?
Yeah. Also things to consider are like, how do people, like, what's the geography like in Korea, where people live, how tightly they're packed in certain cities, how spread out they are in rural areas. There's like a lot of different variables to consider of why you might have more or less spread.
Okay.
But then, if we're talking about like,
but that's good. Good that you're bringing. There are a lot of things to bring up, right? Maybe Koreans just have like better, I don't know, more rockin' immune systems. I don't know, right? They eat so much kimchi that their immune systems are really strong. But so stick with the freedom and control one. Santiago, what do you think?
I think like something that could be really interesting is like to think about. I mean, I really don't know that much about the Korean government, but like wondering whether there's like more like controlling policies over the population. Like, are there like more like laws that, for instance, will prohibit someone from going out if they test positive for COVID or things like that? And also from like, and so like just asking like whether there's like a higher government control or less government control. And I think it'll be really interesting, for instance, again, I don't know what the answer is for Korea, but like if there was less government control in Korea, maybe what has been driving these factors could also be individual decisions. Maybe there's like a cultural, like there's a big cultural difference, and so people have a higher personal responsibility. And without the need of control, maybe through cultural changes, people have been making maybe the decisions to stay at home or things like that that have also been driving this.
Okay, let's go off on that for a second. So Korea is very similar to China, and you heard your classmates the other day talking about China. There's an inflection, a personal inflection toward the community. Just like people in Korea are much more likely to wear a mask to protect other people. Like you put your mask on, it's more likely that as you're putting it on, you're thinking, I might have COVID, I want to protect somebody else. In the West, as you put a mask on, you're more likely to say, hey, somebody else might have COVID, I don't want to get it from them, I want to protect myself. So there may be something going on whereby there doesn't need to be a lot of government control because people are going to automatically act in concert with one another. in a way that's beneficial toward the larger group.
I think, perhaps in Korea, you said a lot of their COVID numbers are very trustworthy. Maybe you're trying to indicate that they have like more trustworthy leadership at the higher levels than perhaps we do in the US. I mean, a lot of things about masking in the beginning of the pandemic where there was a lot of talk from our leadership saying like, oh, we think these things don't work, when I think it's personally pretty clear that was never really the case.
Well,
Not to get political.
But the idea is at the very least here, there were mixed messages. On one day, it's like, hey, wear masks. The next day, don't wear masks. It's back and forth, so everyone's confused. So you don't have to go to that level, but your point is very well taken. Yep. So here, without a strong, there you got a strong government. There you've got a belief in science. Korean people are highly educated in the world of science. So you, as a physics math major, bro, you would appreciate that, right? You would fit in well. Believe that the scientific the leaders of society, of Korean society, root more of their ideas and their policies and so on in science. In the science of, hey, listen, we're going to try to control this thing using the science of public health that we know, and we're going to go forward with that in mind. So maybe that's stronger government, right? It's like saying, hey, we're gonna build our government around here, and we're not going to give you over there these folks on this side. So, PJ, I want you to respond to this. We're not even going to. First off, you're more likely to listen to us here. From like the moment you come out of the womb. The moment you come out of the womb, it's almost like we're injected with something that says, don't trust your government. Don't believe your leaders. It's like, that has consequences. Because there are certain moments when you need to trust your leaders. Remember when the Saudi students were up here, they talked about trusting, right? And it's like, there's something about that has a certain value to it. So, do these numbers to the two of you seem really, really seriously skewed in two different directions? 18,000 and 753,000. Like when you look at those, like what's your gut?
I do think that they look really similar. Again, just like by the first impression that they give, like the fact that once is like the difference between of them is like, it's really just like really hard to compare. And like if you start thinking like, for instance, like maybe the economic situation in which like the lives of like that each person is going through, like the fact that there's like I don't even know how to do that math in my head, but like it seems like there's like what, like at least 5 times 4, like at least 20 times more as many cases, and like I don't know. I just think that's really large. Like that's a lot. Like to have it there. Like, and that it can just be the responsibility of the government and the policies that they're taking.
Or the responsibility of the individuals who are all making their own unique decisions, right? But it's not inherently a problem. I mean, it is. 750,000 Americans have died. It could be 18,000 Americans have died. That's 700. How many of you have someone close to you who've died of COVID? Raise your hands. So like, it's not that many people, but maybe all but one of you wouldn't be raising your hand. Here, anyway, in the U.S., right? Because you'd be like, I don't have anyone. Because, we're like Korea. Like we individuals who followed, whatever. You gave up liberties, right? You gave up some freedom. And so that's a problem, but you gained something. Maybe it's not worth giving up the freedom for. Maybe all the 732 or 34,000 American people in the U.S. who died of COVID, maybe their lives, their deaths were worth it. Because what we got in return was freedom of individuals to do whatever the hell they wanted to do. And so, yeah, you died, but you were a martyr for the cause of freedom. And that's what it is. Because we wouldn't have chose Korea in a million years. Right, bro? I mean, can you imagine Americans going with, remember Chinese students were talking about contact tracing?
Yeah, I don't really know what they did in Korea, so I can't
Exactly
really
like
speak to
China,
that.
man. Total dude,
Okay.
not only that, if you and I were in line, let's say I was in line right now. I'm in line at a drugstore, okay? This is a true story, by the way. One of my former students told me this story, who's in Korea. I'm in line at a drugstore. I pay for something. You're right behind me. I leave. You go and pay. I have COVID. How do they track you? How did they track her? They tracked her by your credit card number. They knew you were there. They have access to your credit card number, bro.
What if I paid cash?
People aren't paying cash. Some people are paying cash, but increasingly no one's paying. But they've tracked her through her credit card. And they tracked her that way, and it's like she gave that up, right? It's like, whoa, man. She gave that up. But they tracked her, and they said, hey, you need to go isolate. It's like, it's not a fascist state. It's very much a democratic-oriented state, but that's how they found her. So would you do that?
I don't know. I mean, like, I'm an American. I grew up, like, in this culture. It's very, like, foreign to me, and it feels uncomfortable to me. But that doesn't mean, like, it can't work, you know? I'm very, like, untrustworthy that to that extent would be a good idea here. I don't think we were very successful in mitigation efforts. I think we did a little bit of something that was not really enough.
Well, we were actually very successful, if you think about it. 750,000 could be, I don't know, like 2.3 million, right? I mean, if we did nothing, it would be up to about 2 million at this point. So, like, but we did something, so we were pretty successful. You know what I mean? I mean, it's all relative, right? So,
Yeah.
yeah, right? Are you with me? I mean, it's hard, right? It's hard. It's hard to, and again, this is good. You guys are doing great. I'm going to keep, okay, go to the next one. Let's look at guns. So the price of freedom. And again, listen, for all the gun people out here, understand, I grew up with guns. I shot a gun. The first time I shot a gun, I think I was 5 years old. I grew up with guns. I had guns around the house. There were loaded guns behind my parents' door, here, there, everywhere. I mean, this is part of life, right? Very much gun culture. This is not political at all. Here we go. Two different societies, but nonetheless, let's look at it. 19,379 violent gun deaths last year. Another additional 24,000 suicides via gun. But we're going to leave those off. In Korea, there were 41 gun deaths last year. I don't know if those were included suicide deaths by gun or not, but let's assume they're not, because it was really hard for me I had to really dig into Korean databases, and I don't read Korean, so it was hard. But let's assume they're violent. Multiply times 6, that's 246. 246 violent gun deaths in Korea, if Korea was the size of the United States, versus 19,300. Freedom. So we're talking about freedom. Freedom to own a gun. So there's a freedom. This is important. And there's a cost. All freedom has a cost. This is part of the origin of the United States. Freedom has a cost. Okay? For Korea to control guns in the way that they do via a strong state, that has a cost. Because Koreans can't own the guns that they want to own. And there are other ways in which their lives are controlled. But that has a cost. Okay? So, what do you guys think about that? Dude, I mean, you're from Colombia, right? So we think about Colombia being a really violent society, but you can't easily own a gun in Colombia. I mean, it's very difficult, right? So
I think this is really interesting. Like if you think about it, like this is obviously the perspective of the price that like you have to pay in the United States to have a gun, but like also if you think about it, there's some benefits to it, right? Like like the fact that you can have a gun, like, is definitely something that is gonna bring you more security. So again, like I like that you mentioned like Colombia. Like I know a lot of people in Colombia, like family members that like they have to go through a lot of layers of law to get a gun because of the places where they move around in the cities or in the farmlands. So like these are things that are like more facilitated here. So like for instance, it's easier for you to like prevent a robbery, right? You could think about that. Of course, you would have to look at the data and see like how many robberies have been prevented because of the use of personal weapons, for instance. But like I think that's why like people support the use of weapons here, like because of those reasons that like because you have that autonomy to protect yourself, to basically have like a very powerful, because like a weapon is something very, very powerful if you think about it, right? Like it's something that by just pulling a trigger you can kill someone or many people. So like I don't know, I just think it's a
Yeah, but listen,
complicated balance.
but, okay, I hear what you're saying. This is good. But look, in Korea, you got 246 deaths if they're the size of the U.S., okay, by guns. You don't need to protect yourself. Like, what are you protecting yourself from? Nobody has guns. Like, what's the point? It's like, so at most what you're saying is to the people in Korea who want to own guns, who first off, don't even really want to own guns, because most people in Korea, just like most people in Colombia, I mean, people who aren't from a gun culture are like, why would I need a gun anyway? So like, all right, why do I need a gun? So they're already protected. There's only 246 people died a violent death if it's the size of the United States. So like, in a way, that argument is moot, because if you lived in that world, it's like, okay, well, I don't need a gun then. Let me move on with life, right? And then you say, yeah, but people want to hunt, and people want, okay, well, all right, now let's work on that. But the point being, I'm not making an argument against guns, right? Understand this. That's not it. I'm going like, this is freedom. Is the price of that individual liberty and the ability for any one of you, even in here, right now, even though you're not allowed to be in a place like Penn State, even in here, you still could be packing. And nobody would know. Is the price of that worth it? Is the question, right? Or it's like, is it worth having that liberty and not having the strong... PJ, I want you to speak on this. Or is it worth having a stronger state who says, no, you know what, we're going to own the guns, we're going to have them, and you're not going to have them. And you could be like, I'm not sure that's worth it. And these are different cultures, different worlds, different ways of seeing the world. Do you have a thought on that? Or like, what's coming up? What questions are coming up for you?
I don't know. I mean, personally, I kind of like to flirt with anarchy. So, taking all guns away in the U.S. is like, I don't really personally see like how that would cut down on violent crimes that are potentially associated with like organized crime, where people could access guns in illegal ways. I don't think we should have like no restrictions on guns.
But they do. But listen, they figured it out.
Who's
Koreans have figured it out.
Yeah. Well, sure. I guess it's a very different culture.
No, I got you. But
yeah.
you know
and
what
we
I
have
mean,
baked into like our founding.
Yeah, I got
whatever
you.
that we're all big on guns and we have more guns than people and
all that kind of stuff. Yep. And so we're backing in this way, but the issue is we got to find this balance. And the question is it worth the price?
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure. Like a lot of people who say like, we have guns in the U.S. to prevent from government tyranny is like kind of silly when our military is like pretty well armed. I think practically the purpose of having a gun would be more effectively used in like the case of self-defense, home invasion, hunting, that sort of thing.
Okay, right. All right. So, and if we didn't have so many guns, we probably wouldn't need to worry about those things anyway. Like in Korea, maybe not, right? Maybe we wouldn't need to be. And so like we're back and forth on this. You see, it's like you have to hold the two things together always. Strong government down here, the government making rules, telling us what to do. You're going to tell me what I can do with my life. You're going to tell me what I can do with my personal time, my personal liberty, what I can do on my own 20 acres of land where I go and I shoot my gun. You're going to tell me what I can do. Over here, well, but when the government...
Most people in the U.S. don't have 20 acres of land.
Yeah, no, I got you. So it could just be, what am I going to do with my time or my gun, my whatever. And then down here, it's like, okay, yeah, do that. Or down here, it's like, yeah, but it's kind of, let's flirt with anarchy for a second. Dude, I have
Just flirting.
Now I got you. I've seen the consequences of anarchy, and it's really ugly. So like, I'm like, no. We're watching it right now we're seeing it in Afghanistan, we're seeing it in Haiti, we're seeing it in a couple different countries in Africa right now. It's like, no, we don't want to deal with that. Like, let's get some control right here. You don't realize it, right? People be like, no, let's have anarchy. That's because you've never seen it. Because you don't know what it is. If you knew what it was, if you watched it up close, as I've watched it up close firsthand, you'd be like, I don't want anything to do with that, man. I would much rather. Instead of that, I think I'd much rather be living in a place where there's a whole hell of a lot of government tyranny, because at least there's stability. Now, mind you, I say that from being in the middle of anarchy, violent anarchy, going like, you don't want that shit. You do not want it at all. Trust me. January 6th happening all across the nation, you don't want that, right? But, whatever. But that means you take rights away from people, bro.
Oh, I just thought it was very interesting what you said. So you said like you would prefer like a completely controlling government rather than one like a nation where there's no government.
A nation where there's complete breakdown. And especially where a lot of people have where there are more guns than people. I'm like, oh my God. And a lot of dumb MFers. You know what I mean? Like a lot of really dumb people. Now, if we were all like Colorado and we were all a bunch of potheads, I'd be like, cool, man, because you don't see potheads like, you know what I mean? Like here, how many fights are there on the weekends, right? If you smoked as much weed as you drank alcohol, State College on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday night would be really chill. And the police all across the country know that, and they see that. And secretly, I can't tell you how many police officers I've spoken with who just wished, including right here in this town, who wished marijuana was legal and widely accessible, and y'all would start smoking it as much as you drink, because it'd be really chilled out. This one cop was telling me, yeah, it'd be like people would be fighting over a bag of Doritos at the 7-Eleven or whatever, you know what I mean? They would just be stuck trying to decide, do they want the family size or the small size? And like, anyway, dude. So that's the thought. This is where we're at. Okay, let me go to another one here, all right? Go to the next thing. So, but now let's talk about government power. So I'm going to go now a slightly different direction. So, but we're going to really focus on the price, the value, and the value and the price of government power, which I've already done a little bit, but I want to do it a little more. So if you go to this example. So right now there's the head of the Oklahoma National Guard is rejecting the Pentagon's vaccine mandate. Okay, dude, I want to show you how much freedom there is in the United States. This is the head of the National Guard. Okay, so if you're not an American citizen, understand that there are soldiers that are connected with every state in the United States, and they are, many of them are, they're connected to the military itself, but some are retired, some are. Is anybody in the National Guard here? Anybody? No. Okay, and you can get called up at any moment, you can get mobilized, right? So the head of that in Oklahoma telling the Pentagon, so the head of it's down here, the freedom thing, we don't believe in your vaccine mandate, get lost, y'all can do your own thing. Dude, this guy in Russia would be taken out and shot. In China, he'd be taken out and shot. Okay, maybe not taken out and shot. Yeah, taken out, he'd be thrown in jail within like that. First off, he'd never say it. Like, he'd never in a million. In North Korea, imagine in North Korea, this guy's like, yeah, Kim Jong-un, I'm not going to follow that. You're gone. This is how much liberty there is in the United States. This man, and he still has his job. He's telling the Pentagon, the military in the U.S., we're not abiding by your order. You know what I mean? This is how much power. And like the good, so if you think, now the good thing about this is that if you think the U.S. government is so big and so infringing on our lives and we really need to control the U.S. government, I give you Exhibit A that says the head of the National Guard in Oklahoma has decided to flip his finger off at the head of the military in the United States. How strong is the government? They can't even get that guy, they can't force him to do that. How strong are we? You know, how big, how huge is this? So this guy is basically showing us, hey, you know what, even in the final instance, we all have a lot of power here. Okay? The second one is the January 6th breach of the Capitol. So I want the two of you to respond to one of these, right? The breach of the Capitol building. Dudes, people breached the Capitol. They went in, they beat the shit out of police. They breached the Capitol, right? This is like, forget about whether you even imagine that their cause was just. This is not about that at all. They went into one of the single most important government buildings in the United States, the most important, the largest government building in the U.S. They breached it. They went inside. They took it over. The military didn't come and shoot them all down. They didn't round them up and throw them in prison. Nothing. The police, they were nothing. So you have like the individual liberties of people to be able to do something like that shows you that, wow, individual liberty in the United States at some level is really working. Now, you know, we're taking a bunch of them and, you know, we're prosecuting them, but what, we get like 2 months in jail? 2 months in jail, that's all you get? 2 months in jail for that? You beat the shit out of police. You stormed into the building. Caused property damage. Yeah, we're going to give you 2 months in jail. That shows you the weakness of the government down here and the power of individual liberty down there. That wouldn't happen in China, man. It would never wouldn't happen in China. Wouldn't happen in Colombia either, as you can imagine. Well, maybe it would in Colombia. Yeah. So, any thought there? The price, the value, the price.
Yeah, like a question would be, for instance, like, it would be interesting to like see like I don't know when this happened in Oklahoma, but like, was that this year? Like the
just happened last week.
Okay, like
4 or 5 days ago.
Like maybe seeing like 5 months from now, like the number of deaths in Oklahoma because of COVID versus the number of deaths in other states.
Yeah, it probably won't be higher because it's just the National Guard, so it won't be maybe a couple people. But the point being, what do you think about his saying that to highest military leaders, the Pentagon?
No, I mean I think that's crazy. Like and like you said, you don't see that in other countries really. Like that is definitely like a high level of autonomy that people are given. But at the same time, if you think about it, it can also have like a cost. Like if you were to like as an individual, like he's in a position of power he's in a military position of power. So if he one day, for instance, just has like something that happens in his life and he decides that he wants to kill a bunch of people,
yeah,
like there's not going to be anyone to stop him, and so he can just make the decision that he wants.
Yeah, well, do you want to respond to that?
I mean, like he can't just order.
Yeah, he
people
can't order
dead.
that. Well, that's the question. Can he order that? Can he just order his troops to go out and do X, Y, or Z? It's like, I don't know.
Legally, no.
Well, legally, can he do this?
I don't know. Well, no, I don't know. I don't
Yeah,
know
we
about the
don't know
mandate. It's called a mandate, but it depends how it's pursued. Personally, like, I mean, you know, if it's a mandate, you want to keep your job as long as the mandate's carried out, right? You should
Okay.
get it. But like, I don't know who this person is. Like I don't give a fuck about this guy.
No, but
like he has no effect on my life.
No, listen though. He does, in the following sense, not directly, but he's a very powerful person who takes his orders from the Pentagon, and he basically has turned his back on the Pentagon and say, I'm not following your orders. And like, this is...
Sure. I mean, this is the first I'm hearing about this story,
Yeah.
so I don't really know anything about
Yeah.
it.
Okay. Yeah, you don't have to know much about it either, really, but you just know, you see the freedom and the government constraint, right? Like you see how that is. Okay, so here, let's keep going. I want to keep going here. I want to show you a couple things. Go to the next one. So here's a couple things we didn't talk. Dude. Yeah. What do you have laptops open? At least you're not watching porn. You know what I mean? By the way, you shouldn't have your laptops open up there, dude. In the back. In the back row. Yeah. Wake him up. Dude, can you?
Or you're just like
Wait,
throwing
hang
away
on.
$200.
Hang on. Hey, so can you go to this? So look, this is something I didn't say to your classmates who were up here last class, okay? Here's what happens when the government gets so strong, so tyrannical, right? Like really, really strong, really more powerful than the individuals have the ability to push back against it. I give you the example of the National Guard commander. He's pushing back against the Pentagon. That's a good thing because you want to push back because you can't. You don't want this group down here just to make these crazy mandates and decide anything they want to do at any moment and they can just do it. You want to have some kind of pushback, whether it's legal or something. You want sometimes that pushback, if you go too far, you're going to run into problems, right? Like in the case of Korea and in the case of COVID, a lot of deaths probably. But here, so for Chinese students, so Tiananmen Square, so this happens 32 years ago. So it's when the emergence of a democratic movement in China started to rise up against the state to say we want more rights and we want more opportunities, and we want to push the free market more than it is. And the Chinese government being like, really, really centralized and a lot of control and militaristic and so on. And the government just let it happen and happen and happen. And then finally, the rubber band pulled too far, and the government just cracked down hardcore. And you got to get outside of China to even be able to Google that and to understand and see what happened. You would never know. Like, I'm sure some of you, those of you who are from China, probably have no idea what happened there because you've never taken the time to Google it. Just like American students don't take the time to Google what started the Iraq War or any number of other things that we could Google. You don't even know, right? Or in the West we say Uyghurs, but I think in Mandarin you say Uyghurs. And like, what's going on there with this group of people? Like, what is happening? And to what degree is this government so powerful and so strong that government can just do whatever it wants to do, and there's nobody to push back against it? And the atrocities that are happening are personal and public surveillance in China, right? In mainland China, in a way that we don't have here. Like, there's nothing that compares to the Uyghurs or the Uyghurs here in the United States. There's nothing. Those of you who are like, well, but we have a violent government, or our government does all sorts of things too. Dude, there's nothing. It's not even close. Not even close. In the past, but things that are happening today in certain places of the world would never, ever happen here in the United States. Not now, anyway. Maybe at some point in the future, but absolutely not now. And there's nothing that even compares. And so it's like, yeah, all right, that's the cost. That's the price, mind you, right? China can shut down a city of 13 million people and say, we're going to stop this virus, and we're going to shut it down, and you all stay in your houses for 8 weeks or 9 weeks, and we're going to shut this thing down. And you will stay in your houses. You will not go out. You will not go out and protest. You will not go in the streets and say, we have rights, damn it. We have rights. We don't have to wear a mask or whatever it is. You won't do that. And then in a city of 13 million people, we're going to have like 8 deaths from COVID or some just incredibly insane number. It's like, how did that happen? How do you do that? Well, you give up. You give up. So yeah, you got to do these other things, but you get something in return. Is the return worth it? Okay? So now we're going to go to what I want to really talk about here. Okay, next slide. Did you know what COPS? Did you know what COPS stands for? So it's Conference of the Parties. So a couple decades ago, we started to say like, hey, this climate change thing is looking like it's real. The UN starts, which is a fairly weak international organization, but nonetheless, it's the only one that exists. So I say we really need to look at this, and so we just had COP26, and COP26 is so every country in the world, over 200 countries came and were represented, including some small island nations, and they're all represented, and they're talking about what are we going to do, right? And what are we going to do here? Because this is really, the argument is that this is actually an existential threat. Climate collapse is an existential threat, like meaning that, human beings will never be gone from the earth, but the existence of life as we know it could come to an end, right? Life will be here, but like this whole human experiment could just be a problem, could go down the tubes, right? Now, mind you, I'm not going to have an argument about how bad of a problem it is, or I don't, right? I don't want to. We're not going to talk about how big of a problem it is, or whatever. But I'm going to give you 7 quick examples that tell me we need to do. We just do something, right? Because you don't argue when it's something like this. You don't argue over it. You just decide, and you make decisions as best you can. And then we're going to come back to our conversation. So go ahead. I'm just going to. So for me, I like well. Wait, can you go back one? Well, no, you can leave that up there. Leave it up, yeah. So there are 3 famous climate scientists here at Penn State University. world famous, like, I've had conversations with all of them. Like, I get the science, I understand the science, et cetera, right? But there's something else. What I started to do a number of years ago was say, these guys, I don't know the science, but the data come from individual people. Like, you want to talk to people who are living life and who have been living life like on a plot of land, right? So let's say like this is my plot of land right here, okay? And I've been living my life, and before me were my parents, and before them were their parents, and we've been living here, and we've been watching the cycle of the seasons, year after year after year after year, right? For decades, and in some ways maybe over a century, right? And you want to ask these people, like, what are you seeing? So I started my own search for this question because I really want to know, like, is this how big of an issue? How big of an issue is this, right? Like, some of you probably, maybe you're not even, you didn't even pay attention to COP26, right? And I'm like, COP20, dudes, if they're right, and they are right to a degree, if they're really right, none of you will have the lives that your parents had. Nobody will. The world, the planet Gaia, this thing we call this life being, right? As the physicists talk about Gaia, radical, right? Okay, so I started finding out, well, what are rice farmers in this little area of Vietnam saying? And then they're saying things have radically changed. I listened to their stories. Past 40 years, everything has changed. I'm like, oh, and then they link it to what it is, right? Next one, then I read about these sheep herders in Ireland. Same thing. Yeah, our sheep used to be able to graze up on this level, but then about 30 years ago, they had to go down 500 feet on the mountain, or 50 feet on the mountain, and then 20 years ago, another 50 feet, and like, it's all changed, right? And next one, fishermen in Nova Scotia, right? And linking it to these climate changes that we're seeing, like, you know what I mean? All linking to the big, larger process. Next one, construction workers in Iraq. Like, I was talking to my buddy Bassam, who Skyped into class in the beginning of the semester, my friend. And, he was telling me a couple weeks ago, he said, listen, in the summertime, like in July, we have a festival here that we celebrate in Iraq. And all the families come together and you do an outdoor barbecue. And he said, when I was young, up and through my teens, we used to have these outdoor barbecues, and as a result of this festival. And you would be outside. You'd be outside all day long and all afternoon and all night long. And you did that. Today, these days, because of heat, because the temperature has risen so much, nobody does these festivals outside in Iraq, right? Kuwait. I was reading a story about Kuwait. Same thing. The average, I was in Kuwait, but I was in Kuwait 10 years ago. The same thing, temperatures. Like, you don't go outside. The whole thing has shifted. Next one, vegetable vendors in Mali. I was reading the story about these vendors and about what they're seeing and the differences as a result of the changing climate. And these are individuals, right? It's like, whoa, damn. Every little piece, right? Next one. Like bird watchers in Brazil, talking about all the different ways birds migrate because of the changing climate. What they're seeing and what they used to see, and people have been watching birds for 40 years. And it's just changing, and every year it's a little more and a little more and a little more. And then finally, like this corn farmer, I was reading a story about the corn farmer in Nebraska. And it's just like, damn, okay? So now we got this issue, right? Okay, go to the next slide. So here's the problem, right? The weak state. So can someone explain that? What do you think I mean by that? Like the response to climate collapse on a weak state versus a strong state. Like, what comes to mind? Anybody, all of you in the class, think about this, right? Think about everything we've been talking about. Now you're like, hang on, I'm going to just nudge you along a little bit. We have to respond to this. What's coming at us? It's like a tsunami of change. And it's not like you have to respond or you, or this guy right here. No, we all have to respond. So what's this going to tell us, and what's that down there going to tell us? Go ahead, PJ, you want to go first? Did you have something? Either one.
I will say that, like, the power of states that tend more towards totalitarianism is that you can execute things like really effectively. Part of that was exemplified. We watched that one video on the quiz about how China is just like building up its infrastructure in its country like mad. And, that's something that is not to be overlooked. But like, if you have more individual freedom, it's good for like idea generation. And it's good for people being able to go out and step out of the normal bounds and be able to come up with solutions to different problems that are novel. But on mass scale, if you want to implement those, a more totalitarian state does have a bit of an advantage.
Okay. Santiago, what do you think?
I agree. I think that like if you have a stronger state, like definitely the state can like take more drastic measures. Because if you think about it, for instance, the United States, 300 million people, like just alone in this class, the day that we talked about climate change for the first time, like there were still a lot of people that remained unconvinced, and there's probably a lot of people that still don't believe it today. So like if it's hard to convince a class of like 500 people right now, like how hard is it to convince an entire nation to take a change? Versus if you have a totalitarian government or a government where like you just tell people what to do. And I think that has a lot of power. That being said, however, if the government also doesn't believe in climate change, like with the COP26, like I know that India is not on board for many of the things that are being made because they're making the claim that like the most developed nations are not really giving them the economic support that they need to, so they're not going to be able to like achieve their goals of reducing CO2 production by 2032 and things like that, right? So if your government is also not on board, then that's even worse. Like if the entire Indian government does not want to reduce CO2 emissions, then that's even more detrimental than leaving it up to individuals.
So let me actually complicate it. Let me jump off of what you just said there, right? Because the Indian government believes in climate change. That's not the problem. Listen. Here's the problem. People need to eat. People need security. They need to eat. They need a roof over their head. They need jobs. People want to get in their cars and they want to go somewhere, right? Maybe it's they want to go down to the Walmart and buy bullets for their guns so they can go to the target range and shoot their guns. Whatever it is, I don't know, right? Go buy beer, whatever. Go to the dispensary, I don't know. But the point is people want what they want. They get sick, they want health care, they need money for that. Everything's costs money. You have Biden's infrastructure bill, but we need more health care, and everybody wants more than what they have. Everybody does, and everybody in every population everywhere wants more than what they have. We want more security than what we have. Even if evidently this guy Bezos wants more than what he has, because if he didn't, he would just take some of his money and he'd give it to his workers, but instead he pays them shit wages and exploits them, right? I mean, so like, all right, whatever. So he even wants more. So the problem is, if you're a government, you got to keep your people in control, man. Like you got to like keep shit like, hey, listen, I'm going to get you all jobs. We're going to make sure you got food. We're going to make sure you have this. We're going to take care of these race relations in the United States. We're going to do all this kind of stuff. And we're going to like radically restructure the economy and the society. And probably in a way that many of you are going to lose your jobs, you're going to have less resources, you're going to have less things, because a lot of the money and resources that you have, we're going to be sending it over other places to nations that are going underwater, and we're going to be spending it in places where like we're trying to mitigate the effect of climate collapse. We're not going to be spending it on healthcare and all these other things. So India is saying, listen, man, y'all you want us to get off coal, but we got almost 1.4 million people here, and billion people, and a huge percentage of them are dirt poor. It's like, what do you want us to get off coal and what? How are we going to keep control? Dude, all we had was like some, guy, former president, telling some people in the United States the election got stolen, and then people come from all over the country and they swarm the Capitol and beat the shit out of police and do whatever they do, right? Imagine what's going to happen if we say, hey, guess what? This climate collapse is really happening, and we're really going to restructure the whole thing. Like, people aren't going to buy it, so you got to go really slow. So the government over here is trying to keep shit under control in a big, huge way. The people over here are saying, we want our freedoms, and we want this, and we want that. Meanwhile, the government over there is going, but we got to take your freedoms away, y'all, because, the freedoms are part of the problem that created this in the first place, and we really, really, really need to curtail them. But you can only curtail so much, because these people here, especially here in the United States, will get our guns out and start shooting. So it's like, so you're stuck. And you're stuck in this kind of place of trying to find some balance. And every nation is in the same position. So, does that bring anything up in you?
I mean, I think there's a lot of, economic growth opportunity, which we have very little of currently in the U.S., economic growth that we could take advantage of in pursuing, improved infrastructure. We are starting to do that recently, but, it's a slow moving machine. But
we're going to take a lot of resources and we got to put them in other places, right?
Absolutely. Especially, lithium.
All sorts of things, right?
Yeah.
And then what you have is you have politicians who are saying, oh yeah, we're going to do that. We're going to bring our CO2 emissions down. But the politicians, they're worried about being elected. Are you going to vote? Dude, you going to vote for the next president who says, hey, first off, I'm shutting off every single coal-fired power plant in the United States, shutting it down. Gas and oil, cutting it in half.
Who would really do that, though?
Let's just say they did. Nobody would vote for them. It's not. It's just like a thing. You can't.
But even if you had a candidate that says that, no one believes that.
No, nobody would. Exactly. So what we do is the candidates all say, they go to COP or they go somewhere and they say, yeah, we're going to do this down the road. But they're not going to do it. They're going to leave it to somebody else, which is basically why, I'm not going to say it. Hang on. Which is why we're totally fucked. That's why we're fucked. That's why we're fucked? Sometimes you want to just, you see how this operates, right? It's the balance. You strong states, lots of freedom, back and forth. The inability to balance these things is probably what's going to keep us going along the route we're going and not do what we need to do to address climate collapse in the way we need to address it. And so we'll just spin. And okay, well, that's where we'll go. We'll just spin. Probably, because we can't get around it. Bro.
I was just going to say, at any point that you have any, government still, it's still people, making individual decisions. And it's still those people are influenced by very personal motivations. No matter how much you try to put our government in, you say yourself in many classes, there's always gonna be a bias, right? Each person has their own bias. But what if it was left to something else, I don't know, some artificial intelligence system that was to determine I don't know, this is some Black Mirror shit or something like that. But that were to really put in and control everyone, but it's at the same time not a person, but it's based more on the data that is seen, for instance, for what's happening around with the sea and forests and things like that.
Yeah. Okay, exactly. The problem is every one of you are going to graduate. Not the problem. This is a good point. Every one of you are going to graduate and you want a job. You want a job, right? You have student loans? and you want a job, and you want to make money, and you want to spend that money, and you're going to spend that money on resources, you're going to buy things, you're going to buy all sorts of things that really are going to be detrimental for the planet. They're going to take us further away from where we would need to go. But you all want that. There's another nearly 8 billion people on the planet that want the same thing. And so the fish are all going downstream like this. And at some point in time, you got to divert it and say, hold on, slow down a little bit, man. Slow down. But it's difficult, right? Like in Texas, as it gets hotter and hotter and hotter in the summertime, people keep cranking their air conditioning, crank their air conditioning. At some point in time, you can't do that. Some government has to come along and say, you know what? We're actually cutting your access to natural gas or to oil or whatever it is, electricity, whatever you're using to power your air conditioning. You're just not going to use it. That's what it's going to be. And that's what would have to happen.
That can, with certain levels of humidity, though, that can kill people at even
I
not
got
very
you.
high degrees.
Especially in Texas. I know this is the problem. This is why it's so incredibly difficult to find the balance here. See, this is the thing. It's so hard. And cultures, some cultures are down here where the collective action and acceptance of a stronger state are more reasonable and make sense within the context of one's own particular life. And some cultures are down here whereby those individual actions and decisions are so important for people, but as people operate on their own individual interests, it may well just start to take us one by one over a cliff. And here, it stops all sorts of other opportunities. You see, so you're balanced back and forth constantly. Gentlemen, ask me a question that has nothing to do with any of this at all. Personal question, man. Anything at all, dudes. Whatever you want to ask. Dude, do you have a question? You have a question? Yeah. Bro, do you have a question? Anybody have a question? Dude, you have a question, right? Bro, do you have a question? Do you have a question, bro? Do you have a question? Dude, you have one?
Do you have any kids?
God, no, I don't have kids. Could you imagine
Do you
my
want
kids?
them?
No. No, my God. I teach. I got to deal with this. For 37 years, I've been dealing with other people's kids. I don't want my own. Okay. And besides, if I had kids, it would be like child abuse to have to be my kid. So, no, I don't want kids. Imagine growing up and being my kid. You'd be insane. First off, it's just like a direct ticket to a mental health institution.
Do you use marijuana recreationally?
No. I use it for other reasons, but not recreationally. No. I will say, no. Hang on. I'm gonna respond to this, and then we're gonna do topic. Get ready for topic in a second. First off, by the way, these guys were great. You guys were good.
I was talking to
Yeah. So listen, I will say this. I just want you to know this, those of you who smoke a lot of marijuana. I'm actually really kind of concerned about I'm not like, I was leading the decriminalization movement. I could tell you a couple stories actually, but including here at Penn State when I first got here. Like I'm pushing this across the country. I've been involved. I'm like having I guess just have a few questions about it. If you smoke, people like smoke pot every day and think like, oh, I'm not an addict because it's just marijuana. It's like, come on, man. Like, it's just a problem for me. Cannabis from when I was really young has always been my teacher, but I use it very, very, very selectively. And it's always just me in the plant. So it opens up things in me. So that's how I use it. All right, man.